Welcome to another episode of How to ABX. Today we are going to be playing on Hero Combat Burn Day. It is 8/27/2023. I'll talk briefly about the rotation and I'll give you additional information afterwards. I'm going to be using Moon Knight with a Rage. You can also use an Anger proc if you would like, if you don't have a Rage available. Rage is better. I'm going to basically be doing 3 delayed cancel, wait till he throws his bombs, 4 cancel 5. Once he jumps in the air and drops down, I'm going to cancel into 2. I'm going to delay it just until he throws his little moon shapes. Then I'm going to use a 6. I'm going to wait until 6 is played out for a little bit, and once you have 3 ready, you're going to do 2-1 really quick, cancel, 2-1-3, delay it till he throws the bombs, 4-5. Again, jump in the air and drop down, and then you are going to do 2 delayed cancel 1. Basically, it's the same rotation, you're just squeezing a 6 in there, and as long as your 6 is ready, you can use it. If 7's available, use 7 whenever it's ready. So let me show you this rotation in action, and then I'll give you some additional information afterwards. Alright, switch right to Moon Knight, 3, 4, 5. He's going to jump into the air. As he lands, I'm going to do a 2 throw 6. You'll see 2 and 3 will be ready together, so 2, 1, 3, 4, 5, 7. Jump in the air, 2 and 1. Okay, wait for a few moments. 3, 4, 5. Jump in the air. Land, 2, 1. Okay, move around for a little bit. 3, 4, 5, 7. 2, 1. 3, 4, 5. Jumps in the air. Now our 6 is ready, so 2, 6. You'll see that they'll get on cooldown. I'm going to do a 2, 1, 3 throw, 4, 5 with a 7. It is close to his roar time. You need your 3 in order to cancel the roar today. So I'm going to wait for a second. As soon as he's targetable, he's going to turn, throw 3, 4, 5, and it will cancel. Jump into the air, 2, 1. Okay, move around a little bit. 3, 4, 5, 7. Jump in the air, 2, 1. Pretty straightforward. Okay, jump in the air, 2, 6. Let 6 play out until 3's ready, and then 2, 1, 3, 4, 5, and then throw in the 7. You don't really have to wait on the 7. When the 7's ready, you use it. It's usually ready around the same time, based upon how quickly it recharges. He is about to jump center. I'm going to wait for a second. I might lose a little score here, but if you don't have your 3 ready, you're not going to get that cancel in, so it's better to wait, in my opinion. Okay, he turns. As soon as he lands both of his feet, you can pretty much utilize his 3, and it's going to cancel for the beast. Alright, nice proc there. 2 and 1. Okay. 3, 4, 5, 7. Jump, land, 2, 1. 3, 4, 5. Jump, 2 and 1. Alright, we got time here before he roars. Now right here, sometimes I'll save this 6 because he is about to roar. And I'm going to slip a 2-1 here, but I am going to wait and save that 3. That is going to mess up my procs just a hair, but he's about to jump center. So you want to pay attention to those proc timers, like when it's time to cancel. 3, 4, 5. I'm sorry, roar timers, not proc timers. Because if he's about to roar and you use your cancel skill, it is going to hurt your score for sure. Alright, we are almost done. 13 seconds left. Let's see how high we can get. Alright, pretty consistent with my usual score. 11.5 mil. It's not really that great of a score, but I do lack physical attack. So I'm going to talk about... Hold on, let me write down my score. I always write down my score so I can evaluate how I'm doing in ABX and ABL. So 11,588,753. Alright, that seems to be pretty consistent with what I usually score. So let's talk about how my account looks, why I scored what I did, choices I made for character builds, some options for teams, and some alternatives. So if you want to stick around for that, let's get into it. So to begin with, let's talk about cards and X swords. Cards and X swords affect your entire account, and if you don't have proper cards or X cards, it is going to impact your ability to score high in any of these player versus environment or PvE game modes. So as you can see here, I only have 16% additional Pierce. You do want 25%. It doesn't affect the ABX score that much, but obviously having more, especially towards the end, once you hit about 8 million, I think Pierce does actually play a factor even in ABX. You want to have as much attack as you can because it doesn't cap. There are other skills to take into considerations as well. Like you always want to cap your cooldown and your ignore defense on all your characters. That's an absolute must. Having stuff like critical damage, critical rate, and attack speed are also important. But since the attacks don't cap, it's good to get as much as you can in there. And as you can see, I only have 13% physical attack. Now keep in mind, the all attack adds together. So your physical attack characters, my 87.1% will be added to the 13% to get my full physical attack. But I have a much higher bonus on my energy attack with a 54%, so I'm a little bit unbalanced with my account. The X swords that I'm currently utilizing are giving me the following stats, just to show you what's available there. I do have a little bit there. That additional pierce damage is a decrease. It's not actually adding to the pierce, but I do have a little bit extra here with the all attack as well, and the physical attack, which does apply to all game modes. Okay, so let's talk about my Moon Knight. Let's talk about the rotation and mention the fact that Moon Knight is actually proc friendly. So if you have an energy or just normal proc, you can actually still use a rotation very close to the one I showed you. It's going to be a little bit tighter because you're always wanting to proc on 5. So this rotation is basically designed for the Rage, where he does do better, but he is proc friendly. You just have to mildly adjust it. Since I'm not used to doing it with just a normal proc and I've gotten familiar with the Rage, I kind of forget how tight you need to keep it. But just something to keep in mind. With my Moon Knight, here are his details. As you can see here, I have maxed cooldown and I have maxed ignore defense. I do want my crit damage max, but I'd have to move some things around. Critical rate, attack speed, and dodge are all good things to have. Now, if you are using a Rage, just a reminder, your critical rate and dodge increase how much damage you do with that Rage. It is important, too, that if you're using a Rage, that you make sure it's rolled with that 0.9% damage per 1% of dodge and crit rate. That is the highest you can get. Lower than that will affect your overall score. Also, notice ignore bosses damage decrease by 60%. That won't be there if you don't have the 0.9. It'll be much lower. So keep that in mind. You can reforge the Rage. You can get higher scores with the reforged Rage. I just have a normal one on my Moon Knight. I am sporting his artifact. His artifact does help. Applying to self, he does do increased basic damage dealt. Damage dealt is one of the best support abilities, so having it on his artifact is absolutely incredible. So increase basic damage dealt to enemies with 50% hit points or higher by 20%, and an additional 0.4% of total instinct. As a tier 4 character, instinct is important. I do not have an instinct match. If I had an instinct match, this would help even more, and of course getting it higher than a +4 would also help my score if I wanted to improve it. Uniform is mythic. If you're curious, this is the uniform options for Marvel Studios' Moon Knight. So option 1 is Shang-Chi, Marvel Studios Shang-Chi. Number 2 is Crescent Light Serious Armor. Number 3 is Luke Cage Uptown Suit. Number 4 is Kingo, or Kengo, if you want to pronounce it like Japanese. Marvel Studios Eternals. And then you have Apocalypse, Messiah Complex. So those are the uniforms if you wanted to know what his uniform options were. Moving on to ISO 8 sets, I have a tendency to go for one of the 3 attack sets because they tend to be meta. They have like basically a proc built into them, which does extra damage. So Overdrive, let's see, Power of the Angry Hawk, or POA for short, and then Hawkeyes, or HE. So those 3 attack sets, each one of them gives you something slightly different, whether it be like attack speed, for example, or skill cooldown. So it's going to be based upon your character build and your account build on which one you should get, or you just grab whichever one you can roll first, depending on how much you want to re-gamble. It is best to re-roll attack sets when you're at 50%. Just a reminder, make sure you have all ISO 8 sets at 6 red stars. In order to get the most out of them, they do need to be a type match, like stuff like the blue one here needs to be a physical one or an all attack for physical characters. Otherwise, it's not helping you. Looking at the info page, you do see physical attack. Moon Knight is a physical attack character. That's how you know if your character, what sort of bonuses that they will benefit from. Energy attack does absolutely nothing for Moon Knight. Skills-wise, of course, I always cap out all my skills on my characters. Getting them at least semi-high is advisable. Striker-wise, Black Widow tends to be the best striker for ABX from what I've noticed based upon feedback from other veteran players, and how your character is built for your striker does affect how much extra damage they do whenever you use that striker skill. So in the case of Black Widow, I do have a tier 4 Black Widow with a Rage. So not only is she advisable, but having her at tier 4 with a rage, which I don't recommend doing anymore because she's not meta. When she first came out, she was only a tier 4 speed character, but now that we have other options and better options like Luna Snow, it's no longer advisable necessarily to build her up to a tier 4 if you don't have her. So you might want to consider other striker options as well. Thor is always a great striker, especially if you have him tier 3 or tier 4. So that's for the striker skills. Talking about the gear. So you want to try to amplify at least 3 slots. I have all 5 amplified on all. Odin's Blessings are always advisable if you have them for your meta characters. Now, with this, I recommend putting at least a 5-star Uru. Don't put less than a 5-star Uru on these. And what you're building, like I said, is going to be based upon what you have here. So what sort of impact you have from your X swords and your cards. That's basically the kind of the high-level overview. Let's talk about team, why I chose the team I did, and then alternate options for who you could run today if you don't have Moon Knight. All right, so Alliance Battle, Extreme. Let's challenge this. So I've got M'Baku as the lead. So the first thing M'Baku is doing for you is giving you that 30% increase of physical attack. So again, that's going to apply specifically for Moon Knight. Now, there's something else he does here. He has a passive that applies to all allies. He is increasing basic damage dealt by 45%. And as I'd mentioned, damage dealt is better than all attack. I have videos on why, but I'll explain it here just in case you haven't seen my other videos. And it's the simple fact that increasing your attack, they could defend against or block it. Damage dealt is what actually gets through. So you're boosting the damage you actually do versus potential damage. So I consider it to be one of the best support options in the game, and that's the one you always want to look out for, is damage dealt. Now, there's actually one more thing that a lot of people seem to overlook with M'Baku. So if you go to M'Baku and you go to his artifact, if you have his artifact, which I do, it does additional support. So all allies are affected by his artifact, and they increase all basic attacks by 10%. This is just increase of attack, not as good as damage dealt, but it does do a boost. It also helps to ignore target's dodge by 10%. So you get both a 10% ignore dodge and a 10% all attack just by having his artifact, which is pretty slick. Let's see. Valkyrie is the one that I'm using as a support character. Valkyrie is the Marvel Studios Thor Love and Thunder uniform. I have given her an insight. She is worthy of an insight. I know for a while there she was actually very effective to use. In my opinion, I don't think she's really that meta anymore. There is a 3-woman swap for combat female, so if you have a rage on her instead, that's fine. Technically, you could give the insight to M'Baku if you wanted to, but having an insight on your team can somewhere in the ballpark of 500k add to your score. So something to keep in mind there. With Valkyrie, she tends to be one of the better supports in the game. I'm sorry, wrong passive. It's this passive here. So again, increase basic damage dealt by 55%. Nice boost here. This applies to all allies. So her passive ability is fantastic to have. I don't think, let me just double check. I don't think her uniform does anything additional. No, it only affects herself. So it doesn't matter if you have the uniform or not. She's a great support character. I do believe her support ability is buffed by this uniform, but even without it, she's still worth having on the team, and she is still worth having as an insight. Alternates. So you could actually use Blade and Blade's leadership if you didn't have M'Baku. Now, Blade's leadership, especially with this uniform, gives 60% increase all attack to allies that are weapon masters. The way you figure that out is if you go to the character, you go to details, weapon masters is an icon that looks like cross pistols here. Leadership wise, you know, there's also other characters like White Fox who only affect leadership. So knowing who you affect with your abilities or your support, such as using Taskmaster, is important. So that's an alternative leadership for Moon Knight specifically. You could technically use Shang-Chi. Shang-Chi has never been very good at ABX, but you could use him if you wanted to. Civ is kind of, she's fallen off. For a while there, she was really effective. Moon Knight is a better option, but Civ can do some damage. She usually scores somewhere with a rage. From my experimentation, she usually scores somewhere in like the 8 million ballpark, so 11.5 is much higher. As mentioned, Valkyrie does pretty decent. I would also consider... See, Wolverine's more of a PvP character. I wouldn't use him here. She-Hulk actually does phenomenal for Combat Day, especially if you have her built specifically with the Marvel Studios She-Hulk Attorney at Law. With a rage, she actually does do pretty good work as an alternative. You could also use Venom. Venom does pretty decent. I don't know where Venom is on my list. I thought Venom was yeah, right here. So Venom with this uniform, specifically King and Black, it actually does pretty good, but Moon Knight, I've noticed, has a tendency to outscore Venom. I know I've had arguments that I've heard from other players. I have Moon Knight built. I don't have Venom built, so I've been using Moon Knight because he's tier 4. Those are the only folks that I probably would consider as alternatives today instead of using Moon Knight. Would be She-Hulk at the top of that list because she is meta for combat female. Venom would be a consideration because he's very close to being as good as Moon Knight as I understand it. And then possibly, I don't even know if I could recommend Shang-Chi at this point, possibly Civ, just because Shang-Chi seemed to be much better at PvP. So that's it. Hopefully that answers all your questions. If you liked this video or found it helpful at all, please consider putting a thumb up and putting comments below. It helps the algorithm. Thank you for watching, and may your ABX score be as high as possible.